Hello, my name is Carol. I'm going to give a little presentation today about how we fight back against gender ideology. I want to first thank Feminist and Struggle for putting this on and for inviting me to speak. I'm sorry I could not make it there in person, but hopefully what I have to say here will be of some use to you ladies. So how do we challenge the homophobic practice of gender affirming care? Well, I have to start off, I think we need to know what gender affirming care means. And I'm sure many of you probably know what it means, but I'll just do a brief little thing. Basically, gender affirming care means that anybody can walk into a therapist's office or a doctor's office, claim that they are the sex they are not, and the doctor and the therapist are supposed to go along with it. Gender affirming care is just giving people what they want and asking no questions. How is gender affirming care homophobic? I think the best way to show that it is homophobic is just to read right out of the DSM-5 what the diagnosis is for gender dysphoria, which, if you get a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, the only viable treatment that is presented to you is transition. So people to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria, people have to have only two of the next six criterias. Only two of the next six criterias need to be met for a person to be given the diagnosis of gender dysphoria and put on the track to transition. Of course, it's fair to keep in mind that in most states in the United States now, no one needs a therapist letter anymore for transition. Adults can transition. They can just walk into a doctor's office, tell them, give me these hormones, give me these surgeries, and the doctors will do it. But we do have to start here with therapy community because this is where the therapeutic community gave the okay for this. They gave the green light for this as a treatment. Doctors will say, well, I'm only doing it because the therapist said it. So this really does all fall back on the therapist. So only two of these criteria need to be met. A marked incongruence between one's experienced, expressed gender and primary and or secondary sex characteristics, or in young adolescents, the anticipated secondary sex characteristics. A marked incongruence between one's experienced, expressed gender and their primary. I mean, the person feels uncomfortable. That's what that means to me. The person feels uncomfortable with the sex they are versus what they're expressing. So I would, in my experience, expressing believed I was expressing my incorrect gender. I believed I was expressing male patterns instead of female patterns of gender because that's what people told me. And I would bet that most women come to this conclusion because of what they're told, not really what something they came up with on their own. Second criteria, a strong desire to be rid of one's primary and or secondary sex characteristics. 3, a strong desire for the primary and or secondary sex characteristics of the other gender. Okay, well, why would a woman want to be why would a woman desire the primary and secondary sex characteristics of a man? Probably so that she could appear as a male and not a female. Why would she want to appear as male and not female? I can think of a few reasons, and I'm sure you can too. A strong desire to be the other gender. A strong desire to be the sex you are not. We can think of a few reasons why women would want that as well. A strong conviction that one has the typical feelings and reactions of the other gender. So a strong conviction that your actions and feelings don't belong to your sex. This to me is super fundamental, and I would encourage anybody, if you're going to get into a conversation with someone who believes in this stuff, to really, this is one that should be brought up. We are designating certain feelings to one sex or the other. A woman is not allowed to feel certain feelings. Only men are allowed to feel certain feelings, and vice versa. Reactions. I'm going to make a bet here. I bet the reaction that's not very female is anger. But I think it is very female to be angry. In order for people to meet the criteria for the diagnosis, a condition must be must also be associated with clinically significant distress or impairment in the social, occupational, and other important areas of function. I would bet that most people actually don't meet this criteria, but again, they're not allowed to challenge it. In children, this gets even worse. They say that in girls, assigned gender, a strong preference for wearing only typically masculine clothing and a strong resistance to the wearing of typical feminine clothing. How many girls have refused to wear dresses? This is especially true among butch lesbians. I mean, if you go back at any point in history and you start to talk, listen to, or read stories of butch lesbians' experiences, pretty much all of us had the situation of being forced to wear a dress and hating to wear the dress, preferring to wear boys' clothes. A strong preference for the toys, games, or activity you stereotypically use and engage by the other gender. They full on admit it's a stereotype here, yet they still use it as a diagnosis criteria to mutilate kids' bodies. A strong preference for playmates of the other gender. What does that matter? Don't we want everybody to play together? Isn't that the whole point? We don't want this separation between boys and girls, like there's this, like they're not equal. In boys, strong rejection of typically masculine toys, games, activities, and strong avoidance of rough and tumble play. Or in girls assigned gender, a strong rejection of typically feminine toys, games, and activities. A strong dislike of one's sexual anatomy. A strong desire for the physical sex characteristics that match one's experienced gender. Well, that's just a bunch of gobbledygook there. But a strong dislike of one's sexual anatomy. We can't think of another reason why a child or an adult, for that matter, might not like their sexual anatomy. I can think of many. So honestly, if you just go through the diagnostic criteria, as feminists, you can pretty much break these down and break these apart into sexist and homophobic stereotypes and roles and nonsense. And if someone really wants to listen to you, I think it's pretty easy to make a case that these are sexist and homophobic. They're especially homophobic because we know that so many lesbians are gender nonconforming. I mean, it is gender nonconforming alone just to be a lesbian. Okay? So you could say, well, just identifying or just this ideology, yes, it's a problem, but, what about those that really suffer with gender dysphoria? What about them? This is such a horrible condition to have. Why can't they find treatment? Okay, let's talk about that. What is gender dysphoria? First of all, gender dysphoria is a very undefined term. It basically means that someone is uncomfortable with their body. That's all it means. I personally don't believe that gender dysphoria is special. I personally believe gender dysphoria is just another form of a body dysmorphia, of or another form of an eating disorder, basically. Some women are very uncomfortable with their bodies, very uncomfortable with their sex for numerous reasons, and they develop anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorders, body dysmorphia. Some women are uncomfortable with their sex, their body, and have been abused or traumatized just like the others. And instead of them having an issue with their weight or with food, they have an issue with their sex itself. That would be I would say that's gender dysphoria. Okay. It really is no different than any of the others, but yet it is treated separately as if it cannot be treated, as if this is this so unbelievably magical thing that we cannot logically sit down with a woman and talk to her about what her struggles are and figure out how she might be helped. How do we fight back? How do we challenge the homophobic practices of gender affirming care? First, we have to understand what it is. We have to logic, and we have to use clear language when we talk about something. We have to raise awareness that gender dysphoria is a normal response to a sexist and homophobic society for women. I think that is key. That is key for me. Women have been sold a lie. I believe that second wave feminism did a lot of good things. Raised a lot of awareness. It gave women a voice. Over the years since the second wave, we've had the third wave, and I would have to say of a generation that really grew up with the third wave, The third wave basically rolled back everything the second wave did. Um, it sold women, it repackaged the patriarchy and sold it to us again. It told us that we should exploit our bodies to feel better about ourselves. It told us that pornography was empowering. It told us that prostituting ourselves was empowering. It told us that there was no difference between us and men. And it told us that if we wanted to be equal to men, we had to be like men. So I believe we have a whole generation now of women and girls who are angry, who are desperate, and they don't know why. They have no voice for it. The only way out, the only voice they have to express their unhappiness with their place, with their sex class as female, is to opt out of being female. Is the lie that they are now, oh, you don't like your sex class? Well, there's something must be wrong with you. Here is some surgery so that you don't look like you belong in your sex class anymore. Now you can obtain the equality you want. We have to bring back second wave feminist values. We have to bring back core feminist values. We have to give women this voice again, unfortunately. I didn't hear so much of the things I needed to hear when I was very young and angry and hurt. I often think, had I been exposed to second wave feminism and radical feminism before I heard about trans, I likely would have been inoculated against the idea of trans. Perhaps would have never gone there. Perhaps. So these are the ways that we can fight back. But we have to do it. I really believe that we have to do it in a very public way. And we have to do it through social media, unfortunately. Social media is very much the way that humans are communicating now, primarily. The word has to get out there, and we have to hold ground in social media, and we have to keep talking and combating this and talking about these issues and offering our stories. Lesbians need to have our stories out there. Feminists need to have their stories out there. Feminists need to have their analysis out there, their voices. And we also have to be very brave and very active in person in our everyday lives. I have had several conversations in person with women just out in the world living my life about being a lesbian, about my transition experience, about my detransition experience, and the way I view gender ideology now. I, for example, had a very interesting conversation with a woman who sold me a chair at a furniture store. Found out that she had a niece who was a lesbian and transitioning. We talked for over an hour. She had never even heard the term butch lesbian. So it matters. It matters to talk to people everywhere. If the opportunity presents itself, go for it. And it matters to be on social media. If you can't be on social media, throw your weight and your energy, maybe some money behind folks that are, and keep them out there, because it's rough. But that's how we fight back. We have to give women a voice again. And we have to logically break down the fallacy of what gender ideology is. Thank you all for listening. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you all have a great time.